Here I am in Singapore trying to retrace my refugee camp.
I do remember him being in the re-education camp. I do remember going to visit him. I only see a picture of him in his uniform.
As a child going on Vietnamese, your parents weren't there.
My parents weren't there. We were not allowed to communicate with our parents. You take care of yourself as much as you can. Being 11, just imagine yourself, 4th, 5th grade. You want to play. You don't want to do the hard work. But nobody told me that I can just buy shampoo and wash out the headlights. Instead, they shaved my head. So imagine being 11-year-old girl starting brand new school.
Quý khán giả, trong tuần qua Khang đã có làm được cái video sau 49 năm thì các bạn trẻ người Mỹ gốc Việt nghĩ gì về 30 tháng 4 hay là tháng 4 đen. Một lần con của Khang có một vài câu hỏi về những cái lịch sử và nó đã thúc đẩy cho Khang tại sao mình không làm thêm những cái câu chuyện của những người khi đi vượt biên lúc còn trẻ họ sẽ nghĩ ra sao. Thì hôm nay Khang có cơ hội, Khang đã ngồi chung với một người bạn làm tại trường của Khang, đó là cô Stenseng, để tìm hiểu thêm về cái hành trình của cô đi vượt biên và lúc còn nhỏ 11 tuổi thì cô nghĩ ra sao. Thì khán giả cùng theo dõi nào.
My name is Stenseng. Was actually Heather Han Nguyen Stenseng, but that's the name I've adopted through becoming an American citizen through marriage. But my given Vietnamese name is Nguyen Lê Hồng Hạnh. What do I know of April 30th? One distinct detail that I remember of April 30th, 1975 is being on my mom and dad's Honda, the little motorcycle, trying to go seek shelter. And it was me, my younger sister, and a brother. At that time, my youngest sister had not been born yet. My mom was pregnant at the time, and she was born within a month, less than a month after the fall of Saigon.
Can you give us a little description of your hometown?
I am from Hóc Môn Bà Điểm. It is right outside of Saigon. I've only been back to my hometown once in 1990. What I love about the Vietnamese community is the tight-knit. Everybody know the kids know the family history. My home is no longer there. The intersection where my home is pretty much a highway now. It's an area that you kind of don't want to go back anymore either. My family has, like I said, we live along a major highway to Tây Ninh, and we have a business, but as most in my generation, when you say business, it's not like selling one thing. It's kind of like you sell everything. We sold cigarettes, we sold gas, but our biggest thing was selling firewoods. My mom kind of the head of the household. My dad was, you would call it Thiếu Nguy. He works for the former Vietnamese government.
Do you know what branch he's in?
I think he's in Sĩ Quan. So, yeah, but I'm uncertain. I have picture. I don't know much. And I do remember him being in the re-education camp. I do remember going to visit him. I only see picture of him in his uniform. I remember my mom pretty much destroyed all pictures that had him with his uniform in it, because we literally have a picture of me and my one younger sister with their heads cut off because he was in the former government uniform. My dad's name is Nguyễn Tính Đồng. He's no longer with us. He passed away a few years ago.
Tell us about your journey to vượt biên. Did you prep for it?
We're talking 1980. I was 11 years old. I don't remember what month we tried to escape the first time, but it's probably within a month. I don't think it's very far. I wasn't even the one chosen to escape, if you call it even chosen. because in our culture we protect the eldest and the youngest and the male members of your children. So my younger sister was supposed to go, but she got sick. So even at 11 you don't know that escape by boat, or you don't even know, everybody dream of coming to America. We don't know how far it is or anything like that. But we actually made 2 attempts to escape. And as you know, to escape by boat, you either are the owner of the boat and you organize it and you sell space on the boat, and mostly you sell it by gold. So my family was fortunate enough that my mom's gao, which is like my gao, was part of the organizing group. So if it's almost like, I don't want to call it a pyramid scheme, but it's like, if you can bring in 5 people, then you get 1 free ride. And that's how, and as is, my sister wasn't even the one chosen to go. It was his true nephew. His sister's grandson was supposed to go, but that side of the family is more related to the newer government, so they were afraid to send him. So by default, he asked my family, and when he asked my mom, it was my sister was supposed to go, but then she got sick, so she couldn't go, so then I got to go. The first attempt, we tried to escape. We got down to the harbor area, and we heard words that there was an inspections going on with all the boats. So then we didn't go to the meeting point with the boat. We just wait, and then we return home with the expectation that we would turn right around the next day or 2 days later to leave. But the weather, it's either weather or some other factor. We didn't leave immediately. So then I was just allowed to go back with my family, but I was not allowed to tell any person where I've been. All I can say was I went to visit sick grandparents. During the month I escaped Vietnam, which was April, as people take into consideration weather factor, and all that, and the size of the boat and how many people. So then on the second escape, they picked me up early in the morning. We went down to the river, got on like a small fishing boat, and we just kind of hike along the river path and like pretend you're fishing. We were not allowed to be up outside, so within our small gare, which is the small boat, there was, I think, my uncle brought myself, his daughter, and a nephew. So there was 4 of us, and I believe there might have been a few other people on the gale with us. And we stayed on that small boat pretty much until dark, and then that's when we went to the ocean and got on a bigger boat. Even with a bigger boat, it's not really that big, because if I recall correctly, it's 14 meters, which is about 45 yards. So I always tell people, just think of a football field, and it's like half the size of a football field. We have 79 people on that boat. So then we got on the boat, and in darkness, we escaped. I remember being chased. I think we got chased and shot at least for sure once, possibly twice. As soon as we got past the international water line, our boat engine broke down.
As a child, what do you do on the boat anyway?
It's packed, it's crowded. Even though I say it's about 40 feet long, I don't know how wide it is, so I can't give you the exact measurement. But a boat, I go to the boating show here, and I get on some yacht, and I'm like, this is a lot bigger and fancier than my boat, okay? We're all packed in like sardines under. We're not even to be on the top. And the one distinct detail that I do remember is all the ladies was very gung-ho when they had to throw up because they got seasick. They threw up in a bag or baggie. But we don't know what happened to that bag, because we sure didn't throw it overboard. So it's probably got all in our clothes and stuff, And I remember being, seasick,
Have you ever been on a boat before that?
Never been on a boat, don't even know how to swim. And I'm pretty sure there was no life vest, on the boat. So, I mean, honestly, at 11, you don't think.
As a child going on Vượt Biên, your parents weren't there.
I mean, you take care of yourself as much as you can. Being 11, just imagine yourself, 4th, 5th grade. You want to play. You don't want to do the hard work. Looking back, you kind of surprised that you went through it because, I've had the fortune of being on cruise ship now and, travel to places, and it's amazing what our people, the Vietnamese people, do to escape the hardship and the oppression that they experienced after the fall of Saigon.
Was there any struggle during the trip?
Well, like I said, we were chased at and we were shot at, but we were lucky. So we were floating out there in the international water line. I'm pretty sure it's still during the day because I remember seeing and hearing people talk about it. Pretty soon we see like a speck in the sky. And as it gets closer and closer, people send up SOS signals. And we really don't know where we are. People, it's not like you have GPS that tell you exact location. Everybody just navigate, by what they know. And most of these owners who operate these boats for people to escape are just your fishermen. So they just, local ocean. They're not out in the middle of ocean with no visible land in sight, and they just use what they know of nature and your little compass. The helicopter turned into a ship. When it first appeared, all we could see was the color of the ship, and everybody was thinking, red, you kind of associate it with communists and all that. And then we hear Vietnamese being spoken, so that's even gotten worse. But it turned out to be a good thing because the ship that rescued us was called the Cap Anamur. All the people on the ships are volunteers, doctors and volunteer doctors and nurses from Germany. We were the second boat they rescued. We stayed on the ocean for about 2 weeks total. They picked up 2 other boats. So in our wave, during the 2 weeks on the ocean, they rescued 4 boats. We were lucky. We were not one of those boats that float at sea for days on end. We were not attacked by pirates. We didn't run out of food. We were only at sea for about 2 days, and then we got rescued. And then once we got rescued, we were on the big ship for another 2 weeks. And then after that, they brought us into Singapore. Singapore was a fairly new refugee camp at the time. They actually used an old military barrack. And I think in like 78, 79, when they start having a lot of Vietnamese people escaping by boat, then they opened up this former military barrack and accepted refugees. But there are lots of rescue operations out there, not necessarily their dedicated rescue operation, but there's like oil tankers, there's freighter, that they would pick up these boat peoples that are floating out at sea, And we had a refugee camp in Singapore, we had them in Thailand, we had them in Philippines, in Malaysia.
As a child going on Vượt Biên, your parents weren't there.
My parents weren't there. We were not allowed to communicate with our parents. I mean, you kind of send messages in codes. Like even after we got rescued, realizing that this ship, was a rescue operation. So they send messages back in codes to kind of direct these boats, the path for them to go. But, none of our family member got on it. We were lucky we got into refugee camp. We sent messages back. I was not even allowed to send messages directly to my family in their hometown. We went through another uncle who happened to already had kids in the US. So that's how we got messages to my family in Vietnam that I was safe.
Took care of yourself.
I mean, you take care of yourself as much as you can. You know, being 11, you know, just imagine yourself, you know, 4th, 5th grade. You want to play. You don't want to like do the hard work. So, I mean, when we were in the refugee camp, I remember going to take classes. I think we were taking classes in German and English because we weren't sure where we would end up, because usually the ship that rescue you end up being kind of like responsible for you. So they're wherever the ship is registered, they usually end up taking immigrants. That's why you have Vietnamese boat people living in Germany, France, you know, Holland, you know, so different countries. So it's, you know, once you start doing the history and talk about your family, you find out these things. Camp life is easy. I mean, we have friends that's like our age group, so we just run around and play. But like I said, my Cậu, on his trip, he brought his daughter, he brought his nephew, and he brought me. And his nephew was in his early 20s, so he kind of sneaked out of the camp to go to work to earn some extra money. A lot of people asked, how did you manage to live at the camp? We were provided an allowance by the United Nations. So the allowance kind of pay for your basic necessary, but if you want extra things, like if you want a soda, you know, or if you want to buy a shirt, then you kind of sneak out and go work, you know, extra to make the cash to spend. Or if you're lucky enough and you have family members that's already living abroad, they will send money to help you a little bit during the time that you're in the camp.
It's not like with fences around.
No, our camp have fence, but people, you know, cut through the fence and sneak out. It's not sanctioned because it's for safety reason and all that, so it's not really sanctioned. But like I said, my wave of boat was fairly early in the wave of boat people, so there was not as strict as with later. And you know, and you don't have like the horror that you hear where people get attacked or there were fights, you know, or living condition was so bad that they rebel.
How did you end up leaving the camp?
Because my mom's uncle, but my grand uncle, my Cậu, I call him Cậu, he had a son that already came to the U.S. So it's kind of all started from his family, and that's what I kind of like younger generation to know. So my Cậu has a brother-in-law who escaped with the fall of Saigon with the helicopter. So when he escaped, he got to the U.S. He actually was stationed at Camp Pendleton. And then he moved to somewhere, I think Midwest, but he came back to California. So when his sister, which is still my Cậu, sister-in-law, escaped Vietnam, brought one son. That's my Cậu son. So to make the story short, my Cậu had 4 kids. They escaped 4 different times. Rarely will family escape as a whole family unit because you don't know what your survival rate is. So that's why his family has 4 children and they all escaped 4 different times. And his story is also interesting because he had two of his kids escaped by boat. One escaped by walking to Thailand, and another got sponsored and came by Bảo Lãnh. So that's how I ended up in the U.S. So my Cậu son was already here. So and because I was a minor at the time, so I was able to follow my Cậu to come to the U.S.
Where did you?
We actually, you know, I have not left Orange County.
Các em học sinh thân mến, các em có sẵn sàng để nâng các kỹ năng của mình lên mức cao hơn chưa? Hãy sẵn sàng đi, bởi vì học khu trung học Huntington Beach đang bổ sung thêm các lớp giáo dục kỹ thuật nghề hay CTE trong niên học tới. Cho dù em thích về kỹ thuật, y tế, kinh doanh hay các ngành nghề khác, đều sẽ có lớp ưa thích cho mỗi người. Các lớp CTE được thiết kế để cho học sinh có trải nghiệm thực tế trong đời sống. Hãy tận dụng cơ hội này để phát triển các kỹ năng đáng giá, giúp các em chuẩn bị cho sự thành công. Các lớp CTE sẽ khác nhau tùy vào các trường trong học khu. Em nhớ hỏi chuyên gia hướng dẫn của mình để xem các lớp nào được dạy ở trường em. Đừng bỏ mất cơ hội này để khám phá về các đam mê và tiềm năng của mình.
That's Orange County. I literally came to the U.S. and lived in Huntington Beach. Okay, I was 11 years old, 1980. So I escaped Vietnam in April 1980. Got to Singapore April 1980. Left Singapore mid-July of 1980. Got to U.S. July 1980, and got to Southern California. Lived in Huntington Beach all my life except for the 4 years I went away to college in Santa Barbara. So, yeah, that's how I got to the U.S. It's kind of long route, but both person with Khao got sponsored by Khao's son, and then I turned around and sponsored my own immediate family years later.
What was your feelings the first time you arrived to the U.S.?
Well, the first difficulty you have would be, I would say, schooling. Okay, I was kind of like the top student in my class in Vietnam. In fact, I was getting ready to go to a competition, and I left. I didn't get to go to the competition. I came here and it was the summer, so I didn't get enrolled in school, but when school resumed, then I got enrolled in 6th grade. The difficulty part was language, that's for sure, because I was not prepared, didn't know a yes from a no, didn't know a hello from a goodbye. Even like the couple lessons that I had in the refugee camp didn't stay with me. The other hard part, I mean, it's funny now, but it wasn't funny then. The family that sponsored us to come here to live, they've been in the U.S. since 1975. They had a daughter. Living in a camp, condition in the camp is not like, going camping. You live with many people in one military barrack. And I didn't know at the time, but when I landed in the U.S., the family that sponsored us realized that I had head lice. So for those of you who experienced that, know what it's like. But nobody told me that I can just buy shampoo and wash out the head lice. Instead, they shaved my head. So imagine being 11-year-old girl, starting brand new school as a 6th grader, had your head shaved, and it wasn't even like, they didn't use an electric shaver to shave it. I didn't get to go to the hairdresser to get my hair cut short or anything. It was just kind of chop up. So for most of my 6th grade, I wore my hair in a scarf. So people always question me about why I have a scarf on my head. I can't reveal to them I had head lice, But, definitely schooling was hard, but the community that we lived at the time in Huntington Beach had a lot of Vietnamese, so they kind of helped us. Like I had friends who helped me with the language difficulty. I say that lasted about a year, and then you start picking up the language and start making friends and adjust to school life. I think the most difficulty was missing my family. I had never lived away from my family. They had convinced me to escape with the promise that they would join me shortly. Well, that shortly turned into almost 15 years later before they actually joined me. I got to see them once when I went back to Vietnam in 1990. I ended up sponsoring them because my dad, like I said, my dad went to re-education camp. We could have them come under the HO policy at the time, the humanitarian operation at the time. My dad would have stayed in the re-education camp much longer than the 2 years or about 2.5 that he was there. But my family, Vietnamese family can be 3 generations down and still related. But we had a relative that's high-ranking member of the new communist government. So he kind of pushed for my dad to get released early. But actually back to, not so much the hardship, but like I said, education was very important for my family. And if your family members had any family members that used to work for the former government, you would not be able to get, they have different standards. Like in our US education here, when you apply to colleges, people kind of judge you by your SAT, ACT. In Vietnam, they judge you by whether you had relatives that work for the former government or not. So they had different standards. So that's one of the reasons why my parents decided to let me escape, so that I would have an opportunity to have an education and higher education. I think it's important for us to remember where we came from. I have 2 sons, and I tell them in details what my escape was like. And they, in turn, I'm lucky enough that they, in turn, share those stories with their friends or any opportunities they have. My kids, because my husband is non-Viet, so my kids don't really speak Viet, or they don't know much about our culture. But for me, I like to share it, not so much the hardship, but for them to know where they came from. Because for me, not having an immediate family around from pretty much from 11 to my mid-20s. When I came to the US, I lived in an apartment with like 10 plus people in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. Didn't have my own bed until I went away to college. So then once you start to experience that, you realize there are better things, different things, so you kind of want to better your life. So I think I like to share the story just so that we know where we came from and how we got here,
These buildings weren't here. I think this was a field of grass that we used to catch the bus to go into the main city. Sad. I don't have a whole lot of memories. It's just here and there, but just knowing I was here 39 years ago. It's so different. None of these trees was here before. I just remember it as a field of grass. Oh my gosh. Can't believe I did it. 39 years and I did it. Multiple families would live in one. There's the mental hospital.
It was broke down not because it's funny, because recently I belong to this group called Refugee People at Singapore Camp, and also with a group called Gap An Amour, which is the ship that rescued me, and they have Facebook groups. So recently I found a guy. It turned out we were on the exact same boat. So he gave me a little bit more details. I'm trying to get a picture from him. But so as soon as we got to the international water line, our engine no longer works, so we're just kind of floating out there. Hopefully that we won't be drifted back into the Vietnamese, water line. As I said, I like to know where I came from and my history. So I was fortunate enough where I took the opportunity not only to go back and visit my refugee camp. So my refugee camp is Singapore, but I also was fortunate enough to learn the history of the Gap An Amour and went and visit the little plaque that they dedicated to the Gap An Amour in Hamburg, Germany. It's a little plaque, and I could see how many years they were at sea and how many people they rescued, and they have different waves. So I was in what they call Gap An Amour 4, and I'm one of the 10,000 people they rescued during that wave. I forgot the exact time frame of the wave, but I have a picture of the plaque of it.
What do you tell people that said we should just forget about this era, this timeline, or this experience, and move on?
You know what? I don't think it's something that you can forget. It's part of who I am. And as part of the legacy I want to pass on to my kids, I don't think you live in the past, but just know where you came from and know it makes you who you are, and remember that, because I don't think if I had those hardships, I would appreciate where my life is right now, the opportunities that's given to us. And I mean, I am extremely fortunate and proud, even though, you know, my family was well off, but I would not have an easy life in Vietnam just because of my dad's association with the former government. Living with the family, with my uncle, it wasn't easy. I mean, I know he's my uncle. I respect him, I love him. But living in a household with 10 people and you kind of like sort of an outsider. I always remember the reason that my parents let me escape was so that I have a better education. So education is very important to me. That's why I work in the education field. My kids, you know, are college educated. And in fact, my youngest son turned out to be an officer in the Air Force now. So he's paying back to the country that's kind of provide me the life I have today. So I think I don't think you should forget your past, but you should not live in your past either. But just remember that your past formed who you are today. I want our students, our community to be more united and, you know, to not, because I don't like seeing that. I mean, I personally don't know many people that are related to the new communist government. I only know the people who work or relate. I remember the oppression they went through. So I kind of want our kids and our family to remember that and make better life of it, contribute to society, to community. My name is Heather Hạnh Nguyen Stenseng, or my full Vietnamese name is Nguyen Lê Hồng Hạnh. This is my story of how I escaped Vietnam by boat in April 1980.
Right,
Okay.
thank you.
All right. You got enough materials?